I genuinely feel in my heart, like, that it's all available to me. And so that's like the idea of choosing this thought of, well, my energy is inconsistent, so I can't make that thing happen. That doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve me, so it's not going to serve you. It's not going to, like, I literally chose to incarnate right now. I chose to incarnate now for a reason. So am I going to be like, well, I can't make this thing happen? Or am I going to be like, okay, what are the assets that I do have? And then how can I put this together in my really unique way? Because we all have these forms of brilliance, and there is zero shame for the areas that we're not brilliant. Like, we are just all mosaics. And so I'm going to lean into my genius and the things that I really can leverage versus the stand in something that I know doesn't serve me and isn't going to serve you either.
Hello and welcome to the Success Sessions. I am Jessie Johnson, coach to spiritual entrepreneurs and healers, transformational coaches, folks who are really supporting the rising tide of consciousness on this planet. And I help them make a lot of money. And I'm really honored today to be with my dear friend and colleague, Amina Altai, who is an incredible coach based in New York City. We've masterminded for over a year. I feel like we are like God sisters in some way, having trained together, and we know these inside parts of our business. So I know Amina's integrity and wholesomeness and mastery on a very personal level. And I'm really excited to introduce you guys to it. So Amina, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And that was so beautiful. You literally made my heart flutter. And I too feel like we are soul sisters and we've been on this journey together. And every time I see you, I literally just want to hug and kiss you.
It's a good thing that we're not actually in the same room, because I don't think we'd be able to resist. Amina, when you were young, how did you define success and how were you wrong?
I was wrong in every single way that you can imagine. So I think a little context is helpful here. So I'm half Iraqi, half Welsh, and I was born in London and we moved to the US when I was quite little, but I grew up in this multicultural family and the American dream was very real for us. Also, my grandmother was an entrepreneur back when there weren't a lot of female entrepreneurs. So I know she's so badass and amazing. She just retired at 88, like total queen.
Wait, and on which side?
On my
Iraqi or Welsh?
The Welsh side. She's so cool because she came from this really poor coal mining family and then just made her way in the world and then created this beautiful business with such integrity, such wisdom. She was my shero in so many ways, and she really did kind of shape my definition of success. So what I learned in the family system was that you got to be perfect. You have to work really hard. You don't ask for help. You muscle through, you power through, and you never complain. And I watched my grandma do this, and she lived in a different time and she really paved the way for a lot of us, right? It was a very different society then. And so much respect for all the women that have come before us. But, there were ways that it shaped me that weren't super healthy. And so I carried this really perfectionistic, do everything, carry it yourself attitude forward into my career really specifically. And basically, so when I was in my early 20s, I worked in marketing and I co-founded this marketing agency, and I was taking care of everyone but myself, right? I was really in that imposter syndrome, perfectionistic space, and was taking care of my employees and my clients and my business partner, everybody but myself, right? And putting on the show for everybody, really just leaning into my doing and just totally ignoring my being. And then I had this stop moment, and I think I've shared this with you before, but it was a Friday afternoon in the middle of summer, and I was driving out to a client in Connecticut, and I got a call from my doctor, and I had gone to her for blood work because I hadn't been feeling well for a while, but I'd been totally ignoring it. But then my hair started to fall out, and I'm somebody that really loves their hair. And so that was the thing that got me to go to the doctor, this bald patch that I had in the front of my head. So anyway, I go to the doctor, and so she calls me on this Friday, and she's like, Amina, where are you? And I was like, oh, I'm driving out to my client in Connecticut. I'm totally dismissing her. And she says, Amina, if you don't go to the hospital today instead of going to your client, you are days away from multiple organ failure. So yeah, it's you have no choice but to stop in a moment like that. It was this moment where I'd been running myself into the ground, and I had these 2 undiagnosed autoimmune diseases, and because they weren't diagnosed and I hadn't been paying attention to them, they were wreaking havoc on my body. And so it was this moment where it's either, do you choose to redefine your definition of success and how you treat yourself and how you treat others and literally turn your life on its head, or do you choose not to exist? It was a very real choice. So clearly I chose to redefine.
This is so powerful though, because I mean, I relate so much to you, and I don't know actually if it's that the other guests that I've spoken to just have a very different relationship, or if you're just being more vulnerable and honest. But I agree with you that like my definitions of success were like, they were fatal. Yeah. They were going to result in misery and death. As a child, those early definitions, they were so ill-conceived. They were just misunderstandings of what was really going on. And so, oh my gosh, your story is so literal.
Literally, live or die.
So keep going. What happened? You went to the hospital.
Yeah. So it was very, very interesting. I had a very curious experience where the first doctor that I went to was like, there's nothing wrong with you. You look totally healthy. And I was like, he's like, look at your skin color. And I was like, well, it's summer and I'm also half Arab. So like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, I definitely don't feel well. And then I found this amazing oncological hematologist who worked with me to really help me get me back on the road to health. And every weekend for the entire summer, I basically had to go to this office and get iron infusions and IVs. And I would sit around in a circle with a group of cancer patients who were receiving treatments from this oncologist. And I was getting my treatments at the same time. And it was so interesting. I was the only person there under 30. Everyone in the room was like, 60s, 70s, 80s. And it was like my Tuesdays with Maury moment, almost like sitting in the circle with them, just hearing about their lives, hearing about the choices they made. And all of them would ask me like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? And I was like, you're right. Like, why am I here? And these are choices that I've made to get me here in many ways. So, it was this sort of light bulb moment where I thought, okay, I've got to change everything. And so I had sort of had my Eat, Pray, Love year, but I was still working. But I went back to school and I started to study nutrition and meditation, coaching, movement. And initially the idea was just to kind of get these learnings for me. Like something was calling me to these bodies of work, but I thought it was to heal my own life. And so, I was immersing myself in them. And at the end of that was like, wow, there's something in here that I need to pay for. There's something in here that I need to teach, because if I'm having these challenges, so is somebody else. And if I can mitigate the learning curve for just one person, I've served my purpose. And that's what got me on this path.
So how do you define success now?
That's a beautiful question. And, I think it evolves so much, and it's definitely evolved since you and I did the mastermind as well. It's very funny, and I am a character, and there's often those lingering threads of perfectionism and imposter syndrome. And you've been so amazing in calling me on my stuff. I'll never forget one of our masterminds where I'm sharing something and I've like done a presentation and a deck all about it. And you look at me and you're like, I don't believe you. And I was just like, and you were so right. I was selling a store I wasn't even buying myself. And it was so great. So thank you for that.
Well, I think it's powerful to acknowledge also two things about what you just said. You are once again showing up in such tremendous vulnerability. I just want to celebrate that, because I'm pretty sure that that's not the perfectionist pattern, in charge. Like, you've done tremendous work to clear that, as evidenced by your willingness to share these stories. And the interesting thing about the other part is that I think it's also really vulnerable and important to share that even though you've done this transformational work and you don't live by the guidelines or laws or rules that you set for yourself growing up, that those creatures, those parts like still creep in. Yeah. And that's normal. And it's not a sign that you're failing or even regressing necessarily. It actually often is a sign that you're growing. So I just wanted, because I remember that moment too, that like we had just met, I think, at that point too. And I was just like, I don't know this woman, but whatever it is that's happening here, I can't, like, I couldn't feel you, You
literally said that. You're like, do you feel this? And I was just like, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, keep going. Like, what did you replace with perfection? What did you, I don't know if that sentence made sense.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I remember the first time I went to therapy in my early 20s, and I'd been working on perfectionism and imposter syndrome for a very long time. And I remember my therapist inviting me to write this statement, and I wrote, I released this need for perfection for a life of meaning and purpose. And it has evolved so much since then. I would say that the context that I want to create and what success is for me today really is being able to stand in joy, love, and freedom as many minutes of the day as humanly possible, to be able to walk into a space in the totality of my being and be so comfortable and confident and rooted in that. And not just that, but then inviting others to do the same. Because me walking this way means that you can walk this way too. And that's real success for us all.
Mm-hmm. The way that I feel like there's actually, all the words that you're talking about fall into two categories for me. This might be arbitrary, but just in my own mind, there's certain qualities of existence, of life, of like, just in terms of your personal experience, joy, freedom, love. Mm-hmm. And then there's these other words, meaning and purpose. They feel just slightly different to me, because to me, they have to do with contribution. They have to do with impact. They have to do with relationship. Mm-hmm. And you said those words first, and I just really felt them land, like to have meaning in our lives, to have purpose in our lives, to contribute, to help even one person. Mm-hmm. I'm interested also in how you measure. And not that you should be measuring more, but like when you talk about as many minutes of the day as possible, like that sounds like a setup for perfectionism, actually, for me, in my brain, right? Like, I'm like, can I be enlightened every single minute? Because that's perfect, yeah. So how do you negotiate that?
So I'm not sitting here with like a notebook and, checking off the minutes, which I probably would have done a decade ago. So I love that you named that. I think it's profound. For me, it's always just checking with how I feel in my body. I just recognize, and I have this beautiful relationship with my physicality, with my body, that I didn't always have. And it's always sending me messages. It's always telling me what's feeling really good for me, what's not working for me. And, the mind-body connection is so real. And I've explored it deeply, particularly with the autoimmune disease. And just the moments where I really ignored the signals from my body is where I have led myself astray, or the moments where I haven't fully unpacked something emotionally and let it reside in my body, I've gone astray. And so just always checking in with my body and asking myself, does this feel joyful? Do I feel free? Am I in the space of love? I think is the most powerful thing that I can do for myself.
How often do you ask yourself those kinds of questions?
I mean, throughout the day, honestly. Oh, especially like if I'm with clients as well, because I'm always trying to understand like how I show up, who I attract, who I can be of service to. And so in new business calls, those things are so important for me. Like, was this joyful? Was this really fun? Do we vibe? Like really checking in. How do I feel after this? Because I can get so in my head.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Uh-huh. I'm actually feeling something. You've said it a few times, but that time I was just like, oh, right. Like feeling physically, mm-hmm. rather than the story or the logical explanation. Yeah. And I'm very with you. I think often actually these days, maybe because I'm tuning in more to that physical communication system, or maybe times are changing, I'm not sure, but I have had so many moments in the last few weeks where my mind has one idea of what would be really impactful to do, but it just doesn't feel right to do it. It doesn't feel, it's like my body's like, nope, I don't care what you think, that's not it. And choosing to, it's like there's a couple of phases there. One is being open to listening to both in the first place, to be even able to tune into my body, but then to be willing to experience what happens if there is disagreement, and then third, like to be willing to choose what it's like my body knows better than my mind.
Yeah,
my mind is super smart. I got lots to, like, there's a lot up here for the world, but like when it comes to making decisions, this is not actually often the place that knows.
Yeah, my mind is smart, my body is wise. And so I don't know if I've experimented. So I used to kind of wrestle with like, okay, mind has this idea, body has this, what's happening? Okay, well, let's play a game. Let's see if we go this way, what happens? Let's see if we go this way and what happens. And now I've learned my body never lies. And sometimes my mind will be like, no, but I still want to go this direction. And then I ask myself, okay, well, are you willing to take a hit if you go that way? And just, we always have choice. We always have preference, even though we know that there's wisdom here and we might choose to go another way. And are you okay to rumble with that?
Hmm. Can you give us an example of a situation, like since you've had this major awakening,
Mm-hmm.
where you went the direction of the mind's preference and
Yeah.
got hit?
Okay, definitely. So after my Eat, Pray, Love year and studying all those amazing tools, I decided that I wanted to leave my agency and then take a role as head of marketing for a very well-known wellness brand. And I was still in my perfectionism, my imposter syndrome, right? So part of me wanted to climb this first mountain in my career, check the box, I got this big fancy title, etc. So, I get the interview, and I'd been interviewing with this one company for 6 months. And then I interviewed finally with the CEO, and every signal in my body in that meeting was just like screaming, like, get out of here. Like, this is not for you. Like, what are you doing? And even things that he was saying were inappropriate and on, like, I knew in my mind as well as my heart that this wasn't right for me, but I just wanted this thing so much. And my mind was like, we're going to do this regardless. We're going this way. We want to prove ourselves.
Mm.
And I did. And it was one of the biggest and most challenging lessons that I've experienced in my career, just going to a space not meant for you every single day, where you were absolutely a square peg in a round hole and your body told you so, and you have to just really make the most of it and get your lesson before you can move on, was so real. I actually think about it probably once a week. I'm like, what was I doing?
I think that so much of that, this is such a timely conversation, because I would have, at any point in our time of knowing each other for the last year and a half, I would have known what you were talking about. Like these intellectually and even experientially, like I knew something about what you were talking about. But I think that just in the last few weeks, through this quarantine, for whatever reason, my knowing, that deeper level of knowing is louder than before. And I've been choosing it more than before, in places that surprise me, in places where it's like, it was just fully a blind spot, that I could choose something else, that it was, that there, not even, it's not a rational, like I'm not allowed to choose that. It was like, I didn't perceive the choice before. And all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to have a looser relationship with time. That's actually something that just came up in the last week. I'm allowed to not finish things. Like, I'm still not liking the word allowed. It's like I am actually not very good at certain things. Being on time, finishing things, shockingly, I'm like a fucking powerhouse, but like those two things actually I'm not very good at. Like, I start all kinds of things. I start books, I start writing projects, I start art projects, I start, frankly, like small businesses, and just like kind of like I just lose my thing, and then I don't do that. And it's something that I have felt, this sort of lifelong pressure. Like, I need to finish the book. I need to finish the task. Even to the point that 6 months later, it's still not done. And I'm still chastising myself about it, feeling like I should have, would have, could have. And in the last couple of weeks, kind of finding the spaciousness in a new arena of my life, where it's like, oh, what if I didn't do that? What if I just was like, yeah, I don't finish everything that I start. I like to start things, and sometimes they're just not, that's all they're meant to be. It's just like starts of things. They give me the idea that channels the thing that I actually want to do for a long time. And it's interesting as I share this with you, because I'm like, in my primary business, my coaching business, I don't ever struggle with this. So it's like, also there are places in my life where there's just no challenge. So I think that underneath the specifics of what I'm sharing with you is just this energy of trusting ease, trusting resonance, trusting love, that like the path that has the most love and ease and resonance for me is always going to be a good path. Oh. And I don't have to second guess it, and I don't have to even understand why it's a good path. I can just know that it will be. And then what happens is that I show up totally differently. Like the way that I'm like confident and relaxed and generous and like deeply accepting in a like exponentially more than I was before, because I'm doing it with myself.
That is, yes. Mind blown. It's so powerful. I mean, I love what you're saying about leaning into ease, giving yourself full permission to just be multi-passionate and just get what you need from that taste, from being multi-passionate, not needing to bring anything to completion. This luxurious relationship with time too. Yes to all of this. Yes. I want all of that too. I'm also multi-passionate and wrestled with this very same thing of, you know, I'm the type of person that starts 7 books, maybe I'll finish one. And then creating this relationship and the space for myself to say, okay, I got the taste of what I needed from the 7. I don't need to read them to the very end. That's not who I am. And I get what I want or get what I need in those little bites. And then allowing myself the space to play outside of that, not be rigid, is where the real magic happens. Love what you're saying. You're so inspiring.
Yeah. I'm so vibing off of you. I love it. I love it. I love that we're talking about this, because this is also one of those things that I don't necessarily talk about, this level of my process when it's so fresh and new. I wouldn't go on social media and talk about this right now, but there's something about our conversation that's just like, yeah, like this is real and alive for me. And I think that people really love getting that level of like personal vulnerability from whoever it is that they're bothering to listen to a podcast or an interview with, you know?
I agree so much, because I think so many times, you know, there's that common phrase of like, teach from the scab, not the scar, right? So like when it's still fresh, that it's real and you can be in the emotion of it, because then people can connect with that. And that was a hard lesson for me. I always wanted the lesson really in a beautiful bow and very squeaky clean, and then I was ready to share. And it's just like, no one can connect with that. It's like trying to connect with like a really clean glass wall. Like there's just no texture. And so being in your process and sharing where you are in your process, especially for you as this really well-respected, amazing 7-figure coach, you have all the answers. I think for people to know that, you know, there are some things that you're navigating and like people just fall deeper in love with you.
Yeah. Let's talk more about that. Like, how do you, cause I think you're a master of finding that sweet spot. I've never heard that language before, but of just energetically, I don't even know that it's in the stories, although I'm sure that you do it there too, but energetically, like nailing in your social media, in your marketing, like you bring a quality of truth and authenticity and vulnerability to your writing, to your posts, that people just, I mean, they just eat you up. Like how do you do that? How do you find that sweet spot for yourself? How do you know what's going to both express the truth for you and also really serve and nourish the people that you're speaking to?
Yeah, I love that question. So everything that I'm sharing is like what I'm experiencing. So all of the lessons that I'm sharing are something that I have like deeply personally navigated. And it becomes very easy to share when I've been like rumbling with this question. Like, so for example, last week, what was coming up over and over again in groups and conversations that I was having was this concept of fairness. Like, what is fair? Like, is fair 50-50? Like, what is fairness in the context of interpersonal relationships, work relationships, society? I think it's such an interesting question right now. And I was like, oh, I want to pull the thread at this for myself, and then also then share it next month through like newsletter and social. So all of the things that I'm sharing, I'm deeply exploring. And I think by virtue of that, it feels very real because I'm in it too. I may be 1 or 2 steps ahead, but I'm in it also. And also real talk, having a marketing background, I went really far wrong with my social before I went right with my social, because I was very much in like, and this is how you create a content calendar, and these are the shiny graphics, and like can do that with my eyes closed, but that's not always resonant. And so stepping into my realness was a real process, and then learning, okay, I want to share what I'm actually going through, and doing it that way is where things really unfolded.
That's amazing. Can we geek out a minute about this? Yeah. Like when it comes to your social media, how do you do it? Do you like do it in chunks? Do you do it every morning? What's your process? Do you let other people help you with it?
So you're a manifesting generator too, right?
Just a gen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar with human design, it's this beautiful body of work that is essentially the contract your soul made with the universe in this incarnation and how you're called to serve. And there's all these different energy types and we move through life a little differently. So we're similar in that I'm a manifesting generator, you're a generator. So I'm a subtype of your type. Um, so our types have a lot of energy. But I'm a hybrid between manifestor and generator, which means I'm like part like intuiting and then part building. So I have this conflict between that I want to go in the cave and I want to do in my energy. So sometimes I am so unleashed and unblocked and I can literally like build something really big. And then sometimes I'm like, nope, just gonna sit. And so I am not consistent. And it's been very important for me to honor my inconsistency and be like, that's who I am. So there was a time where I would post on every day and I was like white knuckling and trying to force it to happen, but it's just not how my energy works. So when I'm inspired by something, I'll sit down and I'll probably write 2 weeks worth of posts. And that happens maybe twice a month. So I just go when I'm like in the flow. And if I'm not, I can't force it. You'll be able to tell if I forced it. Won't be any good.
That's beautiful. I want to like go deeper into this piece because as you're speaking, I'm catching on to something that I think a lot of people get confused by, and that I get, if I'm really honest, I have gotten annoyed by a lot in my life, which is, it's the opposite of what you're doing, but it sounds really similar. So I'm excited to kind of like pull the curtain up or remove the veil on this thing. I hear other people, I've heard a lot of people, it comes up a lot in spiritual communities, in particular, transformational communities, less so entrepreneurial, but then when as like more and more of the spiritual community is becoming entrepreneurial, it's showing up more and more, which is, I am this way. I know because my human design tells me, or my astrology tells me, or my psychic told me, or because I had this meditation and whatever, like true, powerful, important guidance. Slash, because I just know, because I live in my body every day and I know that I'm inconsistent. I don't like to finish things. I'm not a good editor, whatever. There's a sweet spot that I think you're exemplifying, which is knowing yourself, accepting yourself, and then leveraging who you are and the mastery that you have to build the thing that you know you're here to build. The contrast, the thing that like, it's like my little allergy, is when it's used to justify lack of success or lack of impact or lack of forward movement. Like, because I'm a manifesting generator, I can't be held accountable and I just won't be able to do social media. Like, no, that's bullshit. Listen to Amina. Like, so I just love that I love hearing about your process. I love the self-acceptance that you're modeling as you talk about it. And I also love that you are, whether you realize it or not, you're using what you've got to serve. I don't hear you ever slowing yourself down. Like, I can't do that. I'm not able to do that because of these things. I won't be able to create my life of my dreams. You're the opposite. You're like, you live in the world of possibility.
You do too. And it's so inspiring, but I genuinely feel in my heart, like that it's all available to me. And so that's like the idea of choosing this thought of, well, my energy is inconsistent, so I can't make that thing happen. That doesn't serve me. And it doesn't serve me, so it's not going to serve you. It's not going to, like, I literally chose to incarnate right now. I chose to incarnate now for a reason. So am I going to be like, well, I can't make this thing happen? Or am I going to be like, okay, what are the assets that I do have? And then how can I put this together in my really unique way? Because we all have these forms of brilliance, and there is zero shame for the areas that we're not brilliant. Like, we are just all mosaics. And so I'm going to lean into my genius and the things that I really can leverage versus the stand in something that I know doesn't serve me and isn't going to serve you either.
I'm really clocking if it doesn't serve me, it doesn't serve you. There's like, that's another deep resonance for me, that like, when it resonates for me, it'll resonate for you. When it serves me, it will serve you. That principle, I think, is actually like quite deep. And so I'm interested in how you know that. And I'm also interested in how you know that things are available to you. And maybe those are different questions, or maybe they're the same. Like, have you always known that everything was available to you, or did something happen?
No, so I definitely didn't know that things were always available to me. And I definitely, Ra, our teacher, refers to them as our greatest hits. So basically, these are these limiting beliefs that we have in our minds that are on repeat. And they're the stories that we tell ourselves that keep us stuck. And so I absolutely had those. And I've had some really interesting greatest hits and all these reasons of why I couldn't be successful or why I couldn't do this and that. And it's been a journey of rewriting the scripts. And I remember reading a few years ago, about 5 years ago now, Course in Miracles. And they talk a lot about separation and about how like we are love, we are God, like our, we're an expression of the divine. And that for me was like such a hard thought to wrap my head around. Like me, like have you met me? Like flawed and like have you met Amina? She is not an expression of the divine. I was so rooted in this idea that I was separate, and it's almost been like a soul reconciliation. Are you familiar with soul reconciliation?
I've never heard that phrase. Tell us all about it.
They like splinter us a little bit, and pieces of us kind of shoot off, and then we reclaim. And I think that there was a moment over my journey where I reclaimed these pieces and parts of myself and was just like, wow, I am an expression. We all are an expression of the divine. We are all endless love, and it's all available to us all if we choose to believe it and stand in it.
How is that connected to everything is available to you?
Well, because if I don't believe that I am the endless expression of love or the divine, I'm never going to believe that any of this can be available to me. Like it's that separation thought. Mm-hmm. So I see them as very interwoven.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. My secret, like, maybe it's not so secret, but in my mind, I haven't said it out loud before, but like, in fact, everyone that I bring on to the success sessions in my mind is a spiritual teacher. Mm-hmm. They don't all call themselves that. In fact, last week or the week before, I interviewed an accountant. She does not present as a spiritual teacher, but her practice of meditation takes her all the way in to service, to this connection that you're talking about. Her language is different. Course in Miracles says like that we all are teaching the same teaching, but we use really different language because everybody needs to hear it in a different way. And I feel like you just revealed yourself. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, great. Actually, that's one of my really big goals for this year is like, there is this very big, deep spiritual side of myself, and I bring it into sessions for sure. But in terms of like what I put out in the world, I don't think I have really gone there with myself yet. So I'm so happy that we just did this.
Yeah. Well, and why haven't you gone there? And I'll have a follow-up question after that, but why do you think you haven't?
So I actually didn't fully believe that, like it was always something that I loved and was a part of my personal practice. But then again, I guess I felt like it was separate to me and separate to something that I taught. And then I really claimed this space for myself, or this identity as like, I am a mystic and I have these beautiful practices and it's in my lineage and I have these gifts, and like, why am I not working with them? Like, that's interesting. And then rumbling with those thoughts and realizing, okay, this is part of my brilliance. This is part of what I'm here to share. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, Amina. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. So, okay, people are going to, like, anyone who's listening to this is super geeking out. Where can they geek out more? Where can they find more about you? Where can they follow you as you share more of your spiritual mysticism?
I love it.
What's the best way for them to go deeper?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Amina Altai, and also my website, same name, AminaAltai.com. And Instagram is really the best place. It's where I share lots of resources. Or if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. I do free monthly trainings. Lots of really great juicy things there for you, from worksheets to meditations to group healing circles and things like that.
I love it. And I wanted to shout out, Amina, like you, I feel like the way that you think and organize information is very powerful, like specifically visually, right? Like, so I just want to encourage people, because that is not, I don't think that's part of my mastery at all. People come to me and we're just like in the moment, but I don't give them many handouts. I don't like have that mastery of organizing visually, and everything that I've seen that you produce has that also embedded in it. So I'm like extra excited for people to geek out, look at your, like any concrete resource that you make. I like people should be using, like print it out and interact with it and do that stuff. It's very, very powerful. One of your superpowers.
Thank you. I really love a good worksheet, I have to say. Like, it's so fun for me to make.
So awesome. And who would you love, like, how can we help you? Who do you want to meet? What are you working on next? Like, what can we fans of Amina do for you today?
Oh, what a beautiful question. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here, for letting me share so openly and honestly, and all the beautiful questions. Like, this was such a fun interview. And so as I'm feeling into my body about this, I'm like, we had a great time.
Yeah, we did.
We had a great time. Let's see, support and help. I mean, just being in conversations like this is the most beautiful thing. As I continue to get deeper into myself, deeper into my work, a book is a beautiful thing that I'm looking to birth and give to the world. And right now I'm manifesting my magical agent / editor. So that's kind of one of my things on the horizon.
Beautiful. I am so with that. I love that you shared that.
Thank you.
Magical agent and editor on the way.
Yep. I know who they are. I'm just calling them in.
Yep. Oh, and I can't wait for this book and the book tour that comes with it. I'm super excited. I can see
come on the book tour with me. That'd be so fun.
Absolutely. Yep.
At least the LA tour.
Yeah, I'll introduce you. We'll get a whole panel to introduce you, whatever, however we can serve. I'm super excited about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to thank you for being here. Thank you for being so open and generous. Thank you for the work that you've done on yourself, because it helps all of us so much. So I just really honor your willingness to go deep and be uncomfortable and find what real integrity looks like for you, because the service that you're offering in the world is so impactful as a result of that. I love you.
I love you, and I cannot thank you enough. My heart is literally spilling over at your generosity, at your kindness, and your wisdom too. Just always knowing where to go is so profound. That's one of the things that's absolutely your mastery, and just blows my mind every time I'm in your presence. Is you just have this gift of just knowing where to go with people and to hold them in such a beautiful way too. I always feel really supported and taken care of and loved, even in the most challenging conversations with you, and that is just such a beautiful thing to behold. So thank you for this beautiful conversation, for being you, for offering this to the world. I love you.
Everyone watching, please let us know what lands with you, what questions arise, questions for us or questions for yourself. This is a conversation, in particular this one, that I think is really open to how you go inside as you listen to us go inside and poke around in each other. So share with us, let us know what really resonates. And if there's anything that we can do to serve, use the comments to let us know. I read every single comment on every video. And so anything that you have questions about, I will read. And if I don't have the answer, I will get Amina's eyes on it. We'll get you the answers that you're looking for. So thanks for being with us. And here's to your success.
Everything you want is already